If you bench press less than 3 plates, I am willing to bet that you are making this one key mistake in your bench press training. Once I fixed this mistake myself, my own bench press blew up to 352 pounds or 160 kilos with more weight left in the tank. I have coached multiple 4-plate bench pressers using the same tips that I'm about to share with you in this video. And if you stay to the end of the presentation, I'm going to give you 2 free bench press programs that you can literally start today and improve your bench press. And if you want to work with me personally, and I will personally figure out how often you need to bench press, the best technique for you, the best accessories, everything to get you as strong as possible. Top link in the description, you can hire me as your personal coach. So let's get straight into it. Let me not waste any of your time. So why would you even listen to me on the bench press? So I started out as a very, very skinny guy at 132 pounds at 6 feet tall. Could not bench press the empty barbell when I started, and I've been able to build a 352 pound bench completely raw, naturally. And when I get back into a strength block, I'm going to push to a 4-plate bench, and I will document that on the channel. Now, I can use every single excuse that you probably use as to why you do not have a strong bench press. I started out really, really skinny. I am by definition a hard gainer. It's hard for me to gain weight, to build muscle mass, to get stronger. I have really, really long arms. I'm 6 feet tall. I don't know my exact wingspan, but my arms are really, really long. I have very skinny joints, like really skinny wrists and stuff like that. I have narrow clavicles. I don't have like big wide shoulders, and I'm just not like a naturally jacked freaky guy. I sit around 200 to 215 pounds. I'm not one of these genetic freaks, so I had to put in like literal like blood, sweat and tears to get my bench press up to 352 pounds. Now, besides my own training, I've coached multiple 4-plate bench pressers. You got 2 on screen here. Peter recently hit 4 plates, and Darius actually bench pressed 195 kilos at 83 kilos body weight following my one-to-one coaching. Now, I also have coached so many 3-plate benchers. I've lost count of how many. You can see the testimonials on my website. So let me share some of these principles with you, and I will tell you the one key mistake you're making in your bench press programming. So the mistake you are making is frequency. And I have discussed this before, but I wanted to make a whole presentation on this one topic because I really do think it is that important and that critical to your bench press progress. So the one mistake you are making is frequency. You do not bench press often enough. Too many of you intermediate guys, and I'm willing to bet you watching this video right now, your bench is probably stuck at like 185 to 275, somewhere in that range. You probably bench once or twice a week. You're probably following like 531, GZCL, Texas Method, Mad Cow, one of these generic programs, or something that you write yourself that you've kind of pieced together off all these programs, and you probably bench once or twice a week. Now, the reason you only bench press once or twice a week, at the minute you probably think that's enough, and it's not. That's why you're not getting stronger. But the reason you can't bench press more primarily is because you train way too hard every single time you do the bench press. You think that harder training equals better training, and you think that in order for training to be effective, it needs to be really, really hard. Now, it doesn't. That is a problem in your thinking that is holding you back from getting stronger. The main issue is when you don't bench press often enough, you simply, one, you cannot accumulate enough bench press stimulus to get stronger over the course of a week. And thing number 2, you cannot get good enough at the movement. You can't become proficient enough. You can't get skilled at the movement. Now, you can apply this to any other sport. Now, just picture your favorite athlete. Let's say Cristiano Ronaldo for football or Usain Bolt for sprinting or something like that. How likely is it, do you think, that these guys practice their sport only once or twice per week? They don't. We know they don't. Cristiano Ronaldo at his prime was practicing football, soccer at least 5 days a week, probably 7 when he's like in an off season. Usain Bolt trains almost every day. These guys understand that if they want to be really, really good and excel at their sport, they need to do it a lot. They need to develop their work capacity to the point where they can handle a lot of training. Go look at like Kobe and people like that. He's on the court at 5 a.m. every single day. He's known for training a lot. You are not going to build a huge bench press benching once or twice a week. Someone's going to comment and say, oh, but I bench like 180 kilos and I only bench once a week. Those guys are the outliers. They are the genetic outliers, right? They are the freaks who are going to get better regardless of what they do. Now, frequency you can think of as like a sliding spectrum. Some guys are going to get better on once a week, some on 4 times a week. But in my experience across the hundreds of guys I've coached, they seem to respond the best on average to 3 or 4 times a week benching for most guys. Okay, it gives you sufficient practice and allows you to actually accumulate enough bench press stimulus to get strong long term. Now, a big problem when you don't bench often enough is you don't get enough exposure to peak intensity. Now, on the squat and the deadlift, it's quite hard to handle heavy doubles, singles, and stuff like that multiple times throughout the week because those movements are very heavy, they're very taxing. But the bench press in comparison is much, much lighter and much easier to recover from. If you want a really strong bench press, you need to be touching weights quite close to your 1 rep max on a frequent basis. That doesn't mean like really, really hard, grindy sets, but it does mean that you need regular exposure to like 80, 85% and above, maybe even 90% for singles, doubles, triples for skill practice. And then we can do the volume work a little bit lighter in that kind of 60 to 75% range, maybe up to 80%. But generally, you just need to be benching more often. A big problem with a lot of you guys' programs, and I put that as point number 3 here, is that you just don't do enough benching. You spend too much of your recovery resources on stuff like this, like chest pressing, pec flies, and stuff like that. And I'll have guys come to me all the time, and they'll tell me I want a really, really big bench press. I look at their program, and they're doing more accessories than actual bench pressing. They bench once or twice a week. Then they do incline, pec deck flies, laterals, triceps, chest press, shoulder press. So they're doing like 75% of their program on stuff that they don't even want to improve at, and 25% on the bench press, which is their main goal. It doesn't make any sense. You need to be doing more of that stress on the bench press. Strength is very specific to a given exercise, range of motion, movement velocity, contraction type. So if you want to get good at the bench press, you need to be doing more of it, and then the accessories should be the thing that complement the bench press, not the other way around. So why does high frequency work? And I briefly touched on this. So you cannot accumulate enough bench press stress in 1 or 2 days to get really, really strong at the bench press. And I always use this example of bench XP. So everyone knows like the kind of video game format, like Call of Duty, for example, where you need like 1,000 experience points to level up. And you can think about that on the bench press. So let's say you're stuck at a 225 bench or a 275 bench and you want to get to 3 plates. Let's say that to go from 275 to 315, you need to accumulate 100 bench press XP each week to keep leveling up to 315, okay? Now, if you only bench press once or twice per week, it's really, really hard to accumulate all 100 of those points in such a short period of time. If you bench once a week, that means you need to cram all 100 points into one day. You might need to do like 15 sets in a day to make that happen. If you're doing twice a week, it becomes a little bit easier, but still, you're going to need to do like 7 sets on each day. It's too much volume. You won't be able to recover from it. You won't adapt and you won't get stronger. And you just can't do that many sets in a day because the fatigue accumulates, the quality of the work will just degrade so much. So instead, we want to chunk it down into more manageable chunks of bench pressing. So instead of doing once or twice, we chunk that down into 3 or 4 days. Now suddenly you only have to accumulate 25 points per day over 4 days, right? Or you can do like 30 on one day, 20 on the next, and kind of distribute it based on how you recover, how you perform on certain days. It becomes much more manageable to get all of that stimulus in. Now, in addition to being able to do more stimulus, your work capacity improves so that you can continue doing more and more and more benching. And you become so proficient at the movement. You will notice when you go from once or twice a week benching up to 3 to 4 times per week, usually the guys that I coach, they will experience beginner gains all over again because suddenly you're getting so much more practice. You just doubled your volume almost. So you're kind of greasing the groove and you're becoming way better at the movement. You get more opportunities to practice the exercise, okay? Now, a big reason why this works so well is because the quality improves across each session drastically. So right now you're probably doing like 2 hard bench press days where you do like a 5x5 on each day, and you'll probably find that once you get to those final sets, the quality starts degrading, the reps are really grindy, you're maybe even failing reps and you feel really beat up and fatigued, and then you kind of half-ass your accessories because you're so beat up from the volume you just did. Whereas imagine if you just walked in and day one was just like only 2 sets of bench press. You can really lock in, you can really focus on that, do those sets at really high quality. Then the next day you've got 2 sets, and then you have a rest day, and then the next day maybe you've got 3 sets. You can just put so much more intent and quality into those reps, and you actually get the chance to accumulate enough stress throughout the week. Now, really quickly before we move on to the next slide, because I think this is important, in order to get stronger, just generally, I've used this analogy so many times. We apply a stress, which is lifting weights, we recover in some capacity, adaptations take place, and then you're able to put more weight on the bar, okay? Now, if there is not enough stress, you will not get stronger. There's not enough stimulus. On the other side of that, if there is too much stress, you won't recover and you won't get stronger. We have to find a middle ground. We need to find an effective dose of stress that you can recover from, but it's enough to drive adaptations for you to get stronger, okay? And I sometimes use the doctor analogy where if you had a medical condition, a doctor would work with you to find a dose of medicine that treats your symptoms, gives you the positive effects of improving your illness without the negative side effects. That is exactly like the gym. We want to find an appropriate dose of stress that gives you the positive benefits of strength without the negative outcomes of fatigue. Now, for most of you, once or twice a week benching is just not going to be enough stimulus. We need to bump that up to find the effective dose of stress, okay? Now, is my mouse going to work? What about recovery? Because a lot of guys, they're going to watch this, and I see it in the comments all the time, and they're going to say, there's no way you can recover on 3 to 4 times a week benching. It's too much. It's just going to beat me up, and I'm not going to get stronger, okay? Now, first things first, this shows me a big misconception about your understanding of strength training. You do not need to be recovered every time you step into the gym. In fact, if you want to get really, really strong, you cannot be 100% recovered every time you step in the gym. Why? Because of the examples I just mentioned. We need to accumulate enough stress over a training week in order for us to drive adaptations. Now, if you need 100 points across the week, you can't just bench once and then rest for the whole rest of the week because you're not going to get the rest of that stimulus in. We want to find a dose of stress across the week that results in an adaptation so that next week we're able to put more weight on the bar. A lot of guys will just say, oh, well, you just need to rest more. You just need to take more time off. But that logic doesn't make any sense, because if you currently bench twice a week and you're not getting stronger, if you drop to once a week and recover more, sure, you might see a slight peak in performance because you just dissipated some fatigue. But what are you going to do when you stop responding to once a week? You're going to rest more and you're just going to bench once every 2 weeks? When that stops working, once every 3 weeks? It doesn't make any sense. If you want to get stronger, your ability to tolerate more benching needs to go up, not down. We need to build your work capacity, and the only way to build your work capacity is to gradually do more, not less. The less that you do, the more you're going to detrain and be less able to tolerate more benching. All the big benchers in the world, they bench 3 or 4 days a week, and they can tolerate that much benching. Again, you do not need to be recovered every single time you step in the gym. You just need to keep accumulating stress and being able to recover from it in some time frame. So you need to, let's say you do your heaviest bench press on a Monday. If you're able to come in then on your secondary bench press a day later and add weight to the bar, you are by definition recovered enough. We found a good dose of training stress. If you come in Tuesday and you're beat up, you're sore, you're really, really fatigued, yes, we may need to pull the stimulus down a little bit on day one, but it doesn't mean we just need to start doing less and less and less. So the key here is we need to find a tolerable dose of training stress. You don't just jump to 4 days per week benching from 2 days. You find the amount of bench pressing that gets you stronger. For some of you, it might be 2 times a week at first, but gradually it's going to increase to 3 times a week, 4 times a week. You just need to find a amount of benching across a week that results in you getting stronger. When it stops working, you adjust a few variables, okay? Now, another important consideration here is that harder training does not equal better training. And I say this because a lot of these guys who say I'm not going to be able to recover from 3 or 4 days a week, it's because of their mindset around training. They think that all of the training they do has to be hard and has to be heavy to be effective, and it doesn't. And I'll give you an example here. This is from one of my strongest bench press blocks. Here I'm benching 155 kilos a week out from competition. Here, this was my tertiary bench press day. So this session is done on a Thursday. This session here, the heavy one, is done on a Saturday. Now, on this session, I do a single at an RPE 6, and I believe the single was around 140 kilos or 145. I usually keep it about 10 kilos less than this heavy day. Then I do a 3x7 on a Larson press, and as you can see, I'm using 85 kilos, RPE 0. Yes, 0. 85 kilos is about 185 or 190 pounds. And you can see here on this note, I take these really chill, otherwise Saturday's primary takes a hit. So I do these for a 3x7 because I have determined this is sufficient stimulus for me to perform really well on my Saturday session. I've tried in the past making these heavier and doing like 225, 245. My Saturday session tanks. That is evidence that putting more weight on the bar here is too much stress. So I have found the minimum effective dose here and I just stick with it. Too many of you guys are coming in trying to bench way too heavy every single session. If I'm way stronger than you on the bench press and I'm benching 160 kilos, why do you need to be doing your volume at the same weights as me? It doesn't make any sense. Just like I don't need to be doing my volume at the same weight as a 4-plate bencher. You just need to find a suitable dose of training stress for you, okay? If you want me to help you with that, top link in the description. Now, another common question, a lot of guys will ask, where do accessories fit in? Because if you're benching 3 or 4 days a week, where are you supposed to do all of your bodybuilding? And it's a fair question. So these are my kind of bare minimums that we need to cover across the training week. So if you're benching 3 or 4 days a week, I would recommend choosing either one of a chest press or a shoulder press. So something like this, like a hammer strength chest press machine, or it could be like a dumbbell shoulder press. I would just choose one or the other. Determine which of your muscle groups are a little bit weaker. Do you have weaker, smaller pecs, or do you have weaker, smaller delts? And then decide accordingly on the press that you want to do. Then I would do some form of lateral raise once or twice a week, some form of front raise once or twice a week. Yes, front raise, and a lot of you guys are going to be like, why do you need to directly train the front delts? I promise you, if you bench less than 405, your front delts can get bigger and stronger. Don't believe the bullshit you're told online that you don't need to directly train muscles to get them bigger like your front delts. Your front delts aren't that big and they aren't that jacked. That's why you can't bench press 315. Just like me, that's why I train them. Because if there's some potential for growth there, it makes sense to train them. And it's probably good for the health of the shoulders to be training them and moving them in all different planes and directions. Probably why a lot of you guys have shoulder pain, because all you do is bench and you don't do any other movements. Then I would do 1 to 2 tricep exercises. I like to do something like this, like an overhead movement, and then something where the humerus is by the side, like a single arm tricep pushdown. And you need to just sprinkle these in through the training program. I'll give you some examples at the end of this presentation when I give you the free programs, but these are my minimums. So 1 press, lateral, front raise, and triceps, okay? I would do these for low to moderate volumes. I would do 2 to 3 sets, 3 maximum, 5 to 12 reps, RPE 9 to 10. So leaving 1 to 0 reps in reserve. And you want to really try and beat the logbook on these movements, train them really, really hard, because the goal here is hypertrophy, and hypertrophy is a product of mechanical tension. And a lot of guys will say, why are we pushing the bodybuilding hard, but the strength stuff not so hard? There's just lower central fatigue associated with bodybuilding movements. Like, just compare like a single arm tricep pushdown versus a heavy bench press. Like, they're just not comparable in terms of central fatigue. That's why we can push these a little bit harder, okay? Now, here are 2 example programs I'm going to give you. There is a 3-day option and also a 4-day option as well. Why is my... Oh, there you go. And I will explain to you why they're set up the way they are. So this is the 3-day split. It's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday split. Monday is the primary bench press. We do a top single at an RPE 7. And basically you start with RPE 7 on week 1. And then you feel free to bump this up over the week. So you could go RPE 7, 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, and then reset and build back up. We're doing 75% of an estimated 1 rep max for the back off work. So you do the single. You then need to log this. You need to work out your estimated 1 rep max using an online RPE calculator. My coaching spreadsheets have these built in automatically if you're interested in that. And then you take 4 sets of 4 for 75%. Wednesday is your tertiary bench press, so you have a day of rest on the Tuesday. The tertiary one is designed to give you a bit more exposure to peak intensity again, bit more volume, kind of bridge the gap between your 2 days, okay? So you're doing a 4-2-0 tempo bench, so basically 4 seconds on the way down, 2 count pulls on the chest, and then we press. Improves positioning and control, and it gets a bit of weight off the bar so that you're not going super heavy every day. This is for a single at RPE 6, and then we're just doing a regular pulls bench, 3 sets of 5 at an RPE 6 cap, meaning you're leaving about 4 reps in the tank each set. day of rest, and then Friday is the secondary bench. This one is volume focused, 2 ascending sets, so a set of 5 at RPE 6, and then add 5 to 10 pounds for a set of 5 at RPE 7. Then you're going to take 12% of the weight off the bar for 2 sets of 6. Nice and simple, okay? And you can feel free to bump the intensities up throughout the training block, and basically just monitor your response and adjust accordingly. And I'll give you some troubleshooting tips in a second as well. So here's the 4-day split. This one is slightly different. So Monday is exactly the same. We do the pulls bench. This is your primary bench press for a single at RPE 7 and then a 4x4 at 75%. Tuesday is the tertiary bench, but this one is a little bit lower volume, a little bit lighter because we're up to 4 times a week benching. Here we're doing a 3-count pulls bench. So you bring the bar down, pulls for a 3-count on the chest, and then press. And it is simply 3 ascending sets of 3 reps. So you do a set of 3 at an RPE 5, so about 5 reps left in reserve. Add about 5 pounds for a set of 3 at RPE 6. Add about 5 pounds for this top set here, okay? Then we've got a day of rest. Thursday is the secondary day, so this is the same as the 3-day program. We've got a tempo bench single and then a pulls bench 3x5 at RPE 6. And then on the Friday, we have this volume day again, which is just 2 ascending sets and then a load drop for a 2x6. And yeah, super simple. So obviously start out with the 3-day version if you're coming from once or twice a week benching. If you feel like it's working well and you're making progress, stick with it. If it's not working well, you just need to troubleshoot in one of 2 ways. It's really simple. So 1, do you feel fatigued? Do you feel like this program is beating you up too much and causing you to be sore, tired? If that's the case, it's too much for you and 2 times per week might be suitable. Or you might need to just adjust some things like drop this percentage to 70%. You might need to drop this to 2 sets. You might want to drop this to a 2x5, for example. If you feel like it's not working, but you are well recovered, so the opposite end of that spectrum, you feel really fresh, you feel like you can do more, then I would jump to this 4-day split. Same process with this 4-day split. If you feel really fatigued and beat up, maybe drop the volume, drop the intensity a little bit. If you feel really good and really fresh, keep going. It's that simple, honestly. Now, if you need more help, if you've watched this presentation and you still feel a little bit confused, you're wondering like where do you fit in the squats and the deadlifts and stuff like that into this program, top link in the description. Basically what happens is I do these calls every single week. I do like 20 of them a week with guys just like yourself. We'll hop on a call, we'll discuss your bench press programming as well as the squat and the deadlift. We'll figure out what's going wrong. We'll map out some goals together and put a plan going forward to get you stronger. I will help you with your bench press technique, the programming. I will choose the accessories for you, collect some data, monitor your response, and come up with a program that works really, really well for you. We do block reviews in between each block of training so that we can adjust things more closely and get you closer to optimal for yourself. You check in with me every time you train. You send me a message on WhatsApp, show me your lifts every single training session, and I will continue to adjust things. The coaching also includes nutrition coaching, technique assessment, everything else outside of the gym that you need to make progress, basically. So click the top link if you're interested in that. If you're not in a position to invest in coaching, I have a free training program. I'm going to put that on screen. It's a free 4-day per week intermediate program that you can go and steal. If you have any questions on bench press or you need any more help, post a comment in the comment section down below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I'll catch you in the next video.